This is the Hawkeye Q5 Pro, a 2K tube camera with 1080p in the rear. Spec-wise, it's got a Sony IMX335 sensor in the front, f1.8 lens, and a 150-degree field of view. Let's open the box and see what's inside. You've got the camera, rear camera with detachable cable, a couple more cables, power cable and USB lighter adapter, a few more accessories like cable guides, static stickers, extra mount, and the user manual. Here's what it looks like laid out on the table. The camera body itself is pretty simplistic. There's few buttons and not much can go wrong here. The camera swings back and forth on its mount, and the mount is detachable so the camera can be removed from the car pretty easily. On one side are the ports for the rear camera and power, as well as the single button and micro SD card mount. Despite the mount being offset to one side on the camera, it stays steady and has no wobble while driving. I've now learned that this shape of camera is really good for a car like mine that has this giant plastic shielding under the windshield. In ideal circumstances, I would have mounted it a little bit more to the right hand side, but I've got my A229 mounted there permanently for comparison, so I ended up having it right in the middle where it's just a little bit more visible. This camera is based on a super capacitor, which is better for longevity and in cold and hot environments, but it means the camera will not run unless it's plugged into power. In order to enable the parking mode, a hardwire adapter is needed. The build quality of the camera is quite solid overall. Having the lens fixed in place and the pivot point on the mount means that the pivot feels more robust than other cameras whose lens move up and down. In addition, despite the mount being offset to one side on the camera, it stays steady and has no wobble while driving. Since this camera doesn't have a screen, all settings need to be done through a companion app. We'll talk about that app at the end of the video. First, let's look at some video quality samples. Video quality during the day is decent. In sunny scenes, license plates are sharp and readable, colors are vibrant, and the overall picture quality looks pretty good. The camera does pick up quite a few reflections off of my dashboard, and I wish a polarizing filter were included with the camera to reduce the glare. But the camera shows its best talents facing away from the light when the glare off the dashboard is not too bad. Here, tons of detail is visible and not much processing is applied to the video image in terms of smoothing, noise reduction, that sort of thing. Mind you, if you are noticing some crunchiness due to compression artifacts, that's more from the process of converting H.265 video to H.264 so that I can edit it, rather than the output of the camera. It's hard to tell what is graininess and what is extra detail because it really does pick up a lot of the texture on my dashboard here, making everything a little bit kind of crunchy looking. Scene with leaves. Look at this. All of the leaves are visible other than where they're starting to fade into the lower bitrate sort of crunchiness. It's kind of funny how you can describe this video quality akin to describing peanut butter. It's a little bit more crunchy than it is smooth. But I don't necessarily mean that in a negative way. To take another metaphor, think about the selfie camera on a smartphone. Too much smoothing applied to a face and skin makes it look unnatural and unrealistic, and makes it harder to see some important details. Overall though, colors are good, dynamic range is okay, details are good, and plates are pretty readable. Now, on the other hand, the flip side of that coin is the smooth peanut butter, the rear camera. As you can see, my rear camera is mounted facing forward. This makes it good for comparing to the front camera of this camera, but not to the rear camera of other cameras. This rear camera is 1080p. Hi, it's future me. I noticed something as I was editing this video that's kind of important to mention. This camera only films at 25 frames per second. I'd said that the camera records at 30 frames per second a number of times in this video because I was trusting the camera's metadata, but I was having trouble with DaVinci Resolve outputting smooth video. So I went and individually counted the frames like a crazy person, and it turns out that this camera is only doing 25 FPS. 25 frames per second is fine, most PAL video is that frame rate after all, but it's important that the camera gets the metadata correctly so that the video editor or playback or whatever knows what to do without stuttering. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get back to the regular script. This rear camera is 1080p 25 and has some noise reduction applied. But things are still pretty readable overall. Signs are readable, license plates are readable. As long as there's some good contrast, it's, just totally okay. As a secondary camera that's not the main camera, this is good enough, but I wouldn't want this one to be my front camera. Now let's take a direct comparison to the Viofo A229, a 1440p 30 dashcam. Side by side, I notice immediately the smooth peanut butter versus the crunchy video. The Viofo A229 is perhaps a little bit more shallow focus compared to the Hawkeye camera, and that's especially noticeable when looking at distant details. Which one's video quality do you like better? Leave a cheeky comment below and let me know. Now this is also not really a fair test since the A229 has a CPL filter on it, which means video quality will be favored towards the A229 during daytime, just due to the lesser reflections. So let's look at some night footage and compare a night shot between the A229 and the Hawkeye Q5 Pro. This comparison should favor the Q5 Pro because the CPL filter installed on the A229 darkens the video quite substantially. As we're rolling along here, yeah, on both cameras, nothing is really readable, there isn't much detail in anything in motion, until we're stopped, and when we're stopped here, as long as the lights off the headlights are not too bright, then the text is readable. Street signs are readable, some plates are readable, but I wouldn't rely on the dashcam for plate readability at night. If you do get in an incident, always read the plate out loud so that it's picked up on the microphone. Speaking of microphones, let's take a closer look at the Q5 Pro's night footage and also a listen to its microphone. 3, 2, 1. Dashcam audio test. We're going about 80 kilometers per hour over the Alex Fraser Bridge, and I'm talking at a normal volume. You're listening to audio from the Hawkeye Dashcam. I think it was the Q5 Pro or something. I don't remember the model number off the top of my head. It's got front and rear, front 1440p and rear 1080p. Hopefully they look pretty good. It is quite dark out tonight, overcast, there's no moon, anything like that, so we'll see how it goes with headlight contrast and that sort of stuff. Alright, it's time to talk about the app, and as with most dashcam apps on the Google Play Store, this one is quite poorly rated, but from my experience worked perfectly fine. And it's not like I'm using an expensive high-end smartphone. This is a Ulefone, like $200 Canadian thing. That's like $68 American. No, I'm just joking, it's not that bad. But yeah, this is a very low-end phone. When I connected to the dashcam's Wi-Fi, the phone tried to automatically disconnect from the Wi-Fi because there was no internet connection, and I had to override that. Once the camera was connected, it took the app about 30 seconds to recognize it. After that, I was able to open the camera, preview the video, adjust the camera's angles, switch between the two cameras, and change all of the camera's settings. You can see a list of settings now on screen. After having spent a month with this camera, I think it's a solid foundation. Video quality is good overall, and the camera has been reliable, turning on with the car, recording, and turning off when the drive is over. However, I do think some firmware tweaks need to be made in order to elevate this camera from decent to excellent. First and foremost, when it comes to video quality, I think some noise reduction needs to be applied during the daytime video. It's a little bit too crunchy and too grainy, and just a touch of smoothing would make it easier to read license plates. In addition to this, there are a couple nice to have settings that are missing, such as exposure compensation and rotation for the rear camera. I mounted mine backwards, and so, as you can see, the video has been upside down the whole time. Finally, and this is my most important criticism with the camera, the metadata needs to be fixed. It's fine that the camera records at 25 frames per second, but if it does, make sure that it actually is telling that to the computer, to the video editor, to the playback software, whatever, so we don't run into these issues with incompatibility. But overall, the video quality is competent, plates are mostly readable, and things just work as expected. Hey, thanks for watching. If this video was helpful, give it a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.